Hello and welcome to Authors Die Twice, a podcast on video games and aesthetic theory hosted by two living failures. I'm Nathan Weinstein.
And I'm Brian Counter.
We don't normally do a formal intro on this show, but we wanted to start things off with a short overview where we can introduce some of the themes and ideas we'll be talking about. So, what is Authors Die Twice? Our title comes from two seminal works whose combination, in many ways, I think sums up the basis of our friendship. The video game Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, published by From Software in 2019, and the 1967 essay The Death of the Author by the French literary theorist Roland Barthes. This is a podcast that will often, though not always, occupy an intersection between a particular subset of video games, mainly Souls games published by From Software and games like them in the action, RPG, fantasy, and often ultra difficult space. A particular subset of games and a particular subset of literary theory concerned with fundamental questions about what it means to experience art. Our hope is that anyone interested in the aesthetics of games, as well as the game-like aspects of aesthetics or art, whether that means literature or music or just art more broadly, will enjoy listening.
Our conversations will cover a lot of topics depending on what we happen to be interested in from episode to episode. We'll talk often, of course, about video games, starting out with a few episodes on Elden Ring and its recently released DLC, but also branching out to other games, including whatever we happen to be playing lately, as well as novels, books of criticisms or literary theory, maybe even music, and sometimes all at once. We'll also feature guests, and we will have other occasional changes to our format that we'll announce later. So, a little bit about us. We're both academics who study literature. So, I hold a PhD in comparative literature from SUNY Buffalo, and currently am teaching at a few universities in Massachusetts.
And I'm assistant professor of English at the University of Utah, where I teach modernist literature and video game aesthetics.
But we're also lifelong video game players. We'd also say that games have given us both some of the most intense and foundational aesthetic experiences that continue to inform our work as literary scholars. And this is something that we've agreed about. This is perhaps even before literature and art. Video games have been those, I guess, those things that have maybe uh, made us feel this feeling that we still continue to feel when we're encountering certain works of art. Nathan,
Yeah,
I,
I mean,
yeah,
oh, sorry, Brian.
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I would say just to agree, that when I was a kid, games were like my gateway into having really intense, concentrated, absorptive experiences with created artifacts and created worlds, to really just dwell on like a particular object in some stupid game. Like, I think I played a lot of like Twisted Metal 2, and I would like stare at the Eiffel Tower or whatever in the Paris level of that game and just like think about it as a constructed thing, as a virtual object, and would sort of obsess over it and its destructibility, um, and its detail. And like I did this long before I had any serious interest in literature, and and yet I would say like at the time as I was reading like fantasy novels or whatever, whatever I was reading just to pass time, to kill time when I wasn't allowed to play games. I would see no contradiction or even like dissonance or disruption from like jumping from being totally absorbed in a game to being totally absorbed in a book. And so that particular quality of absorption, and how that feels and what that looks like and what sort of analysis it inspires is one of the dominant themes, I think, of this podcast.
Absolutely. I'll just echo again what you said, which is that, I still struggle today, but I remember when I was a child struggling as well once I got interested in literature, figuring out how to budget time when I had free time. Do I spend an hour playing through a level of a game or do I spend an hour reading a couple chapters of a novel? This is still, I think, a problem that we both have today. And I wonder, I think part of what this podcast or maybe our task will be, I think a lot about and I think we will think together about just the problem of medium specificity, and, trying to investigate really precisely, what kind of experience games can give us, what kind of experience literature or whatever other medium can give us, but also what kind of experience maybe is held in common between the mediums and why that might be. Um,
Yeah.
that's something I'm looking forward to kind of trying to get a little closer to, across the course of this podcast.
For sure. And I would add also, I mean, first of all, just a note on format. Like, if you can't already, you can probably already tell just by listening to what we're saying now. But I mean, this is going to be a conversation podcast, and it's going to be pretty raw for the most part. Like, Brian and I have been talking about this stuff for years now, and writing about it together or texting about it, but also just talking. And in a way, we're just trying to sort of see what happens when we record those conversations and see where we go, uh, when we have a place to really sort of to consolidate and to crystallize some of our ideas about whatever we're reading, whatever we're playing, or just like whatever we're thinking about recently.
Yeah, so you can expect a lot of back and forth, a lot of ideas that are kind of developing in real time. Um, at the same time, hopefully, you'll also know that this is not necessarily meant to be an academic podcast. Like we are both coming at it from, despite whatever our positions or credentials, we're coming at it from people who continue to love games, continue to, regard them as being up there with literature in terms of, the types of experiences that we can have with them, but also the types of attention they deserve. Right, Nathan?
Yeah, this is going to be a podcast built on really close attention to specific games, even specific sequences or experiences that we have with games. So there will be a fair amount of like narration too, of just like things that we did or encountered in a game, or things that we noticed or felt when we were reading. Um, I would also say, this is a podcast uh, basically about or centered on critical analysis of art and aesthetics. But when I say that, that's not to say we're going to be using abstruse academic theories all the time. I think both of us try to keep our attention as much as possible, or our engagement with works of art as much as possible, sort of at the level of basic life experience. We're interested in works in continuity with the way that we live and go about our days, and how there's a lot of continuity or overlap between the things that we're experiencing within the realm of a novel or a game and outside it. I would also say, like, by critical analysis, we don't mean analysis that is critical of the games or necessarily critical of the games or the novels or whatever the books that we're talking about. I mean, I think we both agree, Brian, like, we're interested in different perspectives you can take on art, right? Different critical perspectives you can take, perspectives informed, for instance, by political or historical context, or even by Marxist frameworks or interpretive positions. But for us, like, for us, critical just means focused attention. That's really all we mean. Like, focused attention to form, focused attention to experience, to the emotions that are evoked by artworks, by books, by specific sentences, and just trying to do justice to the complexity and the often paradoxical or contradictory nature of those experiences. Like, that's really the place we're coming from here. And so, while we may, venture judgments, right, aesthetic judgments, political judgments, or whatever of the works that we're talking about, like, for us, it's really always going to be about a certain quality of attention.
Yes, and just to maybe extend that a little bit, those judgments, whatever judgments we render or pronounce or whatever, are really more in service of chipping away at a description. Maybe this is maybe how I would put it, like a description of that experience that we're talking about, rather than, some kind of totalizing idea of what this game or this work of literature is supposed to mean today in a larger, broader sense, right? So we are, I mean, I guess in a way you could say that we're taking our kind of subjective experiences and trying to um, examine those experiences in the context of a game without maybe trying to prescribe any sort of experience that anyone else should have to uh, try to align with or anything like that.
Yeah, I love the term description because that to me is what the best criticism is. Like in some ways, it's not argument and it's not even interpretation, but it's just accurate description. And I think for both of us, this will be a journey towards finding that accurate description of, again, like what we think, what we felt when we engaged with the work or with a certain very specific part of a work. Finding the words, right, finding the right terms, finding the right perspective. This will be an ongoing sort of back and forth. And as Bryan, as you said, like it'll lead to a lot of, potentially a lot of half-formed thoughts or thoughts that are on the way to full development. And it'll be reiterative and recursive, and we'll often, I think, gesture back to things that we talked about in previous episodes or things that we've been writing about recently or things that we've talked about off the pod. Um, so that's on the way I have set up. I mean, Bryan, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's it. I'm just excited to, to get this started and excited to be talking about a whole wide range of excellent games and other pieces with you.
Me too. So thanks everyone, for joining us on this journey. And again, we're starting off with a couple episodes on Elden Ring, mostly focused around the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC that came out last summer. Both of us played through it, and we just recently, just a few weeks ago, finally finished the DLC together, co-oping the promised consort Radahn and winning it after winning the battle after like so many tries and so many hours. So we get into that in a future episode as well. But for now, thanks again. And Bryan, remember, keep that magic lantern lit.
Thank you. See you next time.